Hi, I'm Orlando dos Santos. I'm here with Andrew Hastie, Federal Member for Canning, and it's great to have you here, Andrew.
Well, thank you for having me again, Orlando. It's great to be back.
Today you've been interviewed by some of our students, and I hope you've enjoyed the experience. I hope it hasn't been as daunting as some of the press conferences you go to.
No, the questions have been insightful, but not too challenging. I've had a lot worse, so it's good to be amongst friends.
Fantastic. One of the things that came through to me from the interviews that you've just had is the strength of your mental character, and it seems like you have a really strong character and mental fortitude. Can you tell me about some of the challenges you might have faced over the last couple of months?
Sure. I guess with politics, the challenges are more public, and so generally they involve media. Of course, you have challenges within the party and with your colleagues, but generally they're of a private nature. The real challenges I found have been the public ones, and so last year, for instance, when I was pre-selected as the candidate for Canning by the Liberal Party, a story broke about my war service record, and then I had a challenge during the last campaign with the uniform. And how you handle those publicly, in a sense, reflects who you are. And I don't like to sort of shrink away from something. I like to face something head on, and that's the approach I take generally.
Sure. Now, in your line of work, obviously, there's a lot of opportunity for you to have personal rejection and a sense that some people don't like you, particularly from the other party.
Sure.
How do you handle that?
I think the most important thing is to firstly not take it personally. People see you as a public figure and they think they know who you are, when in reality there is quite a distinct difference between what's projected publicly and who I am. Of course there's a correlation, but it's not always accurate, and so people will attack you over something you might have said without understanding the fuller context. And so my general approach is to give people the benefit of the doubt. Sure. And always to reach out. But secondly, that's part of the game, and we're in the contest we're in the battle of ideas. Sure. And we're competing with different visions for what Australia should look like, and so there's always going to be a bit of flack, there's always going to be a bit of resistance, and that's part of the game.
Sure. And how important is it to actually have a good family relationship for the support that you would need?
Absolutely critical to have a loving and supportive wife, to have a little boy who doesn't really care what I do in politics is a real blessing. But just as importantly, I think your team has to support you as well. So my wife, I think about it in concentric circles. My wife and my son, so my family, they're my first base of support, and then my office, people who answer a lot of the mail, who receive a lot of the mail, who have to provide advice for me, who have to look after things when I'm not there. They're absolutely critical to what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the foundational core values that we have as a school is courage. Another one is persistence, and another one is respect. And we tend to try and focus in on failure just being a stepping stone to success and always finding a creative solution. I was very impressed with the way that you handled the situation on Pinjarra Road, where I think one of your billboards was messed up. Or can you tell me a little bit about that?
So we had a billboard on Pinjarra Road, and someone had come along and graffitied over my face. And your initial reaction is like, really? That costs money. Yeah. It's an important piece of advertising. And then I thought, well, how can we turn this into something for good? And one of my friends, one of my supporters, he had a mate who's a very talented graffiti artist. And we thought, you know what, let's paint over the top of it. And initially the plan was just to paint over the top of it. And I thought, well, that's not in the spirit of graffiti. Why don't we add the mullet and the handlebar moustache? Because ultimately the graffiti artist who painted over the top, he or she was sending a message, and we thought we'd keep in the spirit of his initial or her initial message and deface my own picture, but in a fun sort of way. And of course that took hold in the press, and it was actually a good thing.
And what you said there was vitally important. How do we turn this bad situation into good? And if our students can get a grasp of that, even after they leave school, they will have lots of bad situations. That is a terrific story to remind our students, even in the future, that every bad situation can be turned into good. Would you see that as a key mental attitude or emotional attitude for life?
Definitely. Failure is such an important part of my makeup. I've failed many times in my previous career. I've failed at things that still I think about now. Sport's a really important one for me. I used to compete quite a lot, and I was part of a team back in Sydney when I was growing up, and we lost race after race after race, and I sat there thinking, why did we keep losing? And little things to do with preparation made all the difference. So when I do something now, I prepare a lot more effectively. A classic one in the SAS, when I was working towards my beret, I failed at my pistol shooting, and I had to wait a full year before I could get my beret, and I was shattered. And then I worked really hard, and I didn't miss a shot the following year. And so I turned something that was my weakness into a strength. And so all these little experiences add up, and it's just failure hurts. Yeah. There's no getting around it. Yeah. But if you're not prepared to fail, then you won't succeed in the long run.
Yeah, and that's a terrific message. Failure does hurt, but the people who never fail are the people who never risk getting to the edge. And you've constantly been on the edge and realized that failure is just a stepping stone to that success. But preparation and hard work are, as you just mentioned, are absolutely key to us being successful.
That's right, and I think failure is a lot easier to accept when you've done good preparation.
Yeah.
You might still fail even after doing all the preparation, but to know that you couldn't have done anything else and that you gave it your best, there's a lot of consolation in that.
Well, I could certainly see the preparation you put into your first parliamentary speech, which I listened to with interest, and there was a lot of preparation in that, communicated really well, and it's been...
Well, I can give you the story to that very, very briefly.
Okay, please.
In May last year, I had a bad hip. I had surgery in May last year, and from an injury that I'd sustained, and I was on my back for about 6 to 8 weeks, and so I sat there reading and taking notes and preparing for something. I don't know what I was preparing for, but I spent a long time reading and writing. And then when Don Randall passed on and I was pre-selected and then elected, for my maiden speech I had 2 weeks to prepare, and I had a notebook full of all this stuff. And so sometimes you'll prepare but you won't even know what for.
Yeah.
But your todays determine your tomorrows, so
absolutely,
it's always good to work hard
and just being diligent with what you have in your hand at that time.
Exactly.
And the diligence will pay off.
That's right.
Fantastic. It's been a great privilege to have Andrew Hastie here with us today. For me, he's a great inspiration of hard work, teamwork, mental attitude, and a purpose to present and to deliver the best for this nation. So, Andrew Hastie, thank you so much for being the federal member for Canning. It's a real privilege to work with you.
Thank you very much, Orlando. Thank you.